Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today, I'm going to be talking about Ania Ahlborn's latest release, The Unseen. There's a chance this book hasn't come out yet. I don't actually know the release date of this, but I got this in a Nightworms package. I'm super excited about it. This was on my most anticipated reads of 2025 list. It is here. I have read it. I have things to say about it. For those of you guys who do not know, Ania Ahlborn is one of my absolute favorite authors. She's an absolute must-buy author. I've read as much of her bibliography as I can get. I always pick up her new releases. She actually had a release out in 2024 that I wasn't able to get my hands on until early 2025 because of the way that it was released. I have many thoughts on it, but it wasn't my favorite Ania Ahlborn book, unfortunately. And that was called Good and Joyful Things. It was released in 2024 as an exclusive printing from Suntup Press. Finally came out for a reasonable price in paperback, I believe back in January. So I read it, and it was more of like a family drama that was really, really sad and dark than a horror story. And I'm used to Ania Ahlborn writing really, really dark horror stories. And they're usually around, they're almost all exclusively around the family unit. I call it familial horror. I love her style of horror. I think it's really interesting. I think it's really unique. I think it's really, really bleak. It was interesting to see her do kind of like a dark drama, I would say, but it was marketed as a horror versus something like Dark Across the Bay, which tends to get like listed as a thriller. I think it's even listed as a thriller in this book. And I think Dark Across the Bay is definitely like an invasion horror story. It's very creepy. It's very well done. I love that novella. So was very interested to read this one and was hoping again that it was once again going to be a horror story from Ania and not like a drama, even though I appreciate her branching out. But good news, it was a horror story. So I'm going to read the back of the book really quickly and then we're going to dive in. All right. So it says, a terrifying new novel from best-selling #horror book talk sensation Ania Ahlborn, the acclaimed author of the modern classic Brother, which if you have not read Brother, it's my favorite thing that Ania Ahlborn has ever written. Oh, I cannot speak today. It's my favorite thing that Ania Ahlborn has ever written. It is not for the faint of heart. It is very disturbing. It is very messed up. It is very bleak. It is phenomenal. This one, not as disturbing, not as messed up, not as bleak. Still very good. But let's continue. It says, do you see it? Isla Hansen, a mother reeling from a devastating loss, is beside herself with grief when a mysterious orphan appears on the outskirts of the Hansens' secluded Colorado property. Although strange and unexplainable, the child's presence breathes new life into Isla. But as they settle in, Isla's husband Luke and their 5 children notice peculiarities that hint at something far beyond the ordinary, anomalies that change the boundaries of sanity. The tension within the Hansen household grows, and with it, the sense that there is something very wrong with the new kid in the house. The Unseen is a haunting tale that walks the line between the familiar and the unknown, drawing us into a chilling narrative where reality itself feels just out of reach. All right, y'all. So this is a dark one. This is definitely a very, very bleak Ania Ahlborn story. I love the setting. We're kind of set in like the rural parts of Colorado with a family of 7. So 2 parents, 5 children, and we get chapters from all of their perspectives, which I really, really loved. Ania Ahlborn has such a great narrative voice when writing chapters from different perspectives, and you really are able to tell who is speaking apart, like the way that the prose is written, not just the quotes and dialogue, really feels like you were coming from a different person's perspective. I will say, I believe it was Olive and Willow were very, very similar, and I kind of tripped up a little bit in reading their perspectives. Olive, I believe, was the 13-year-old girl, and Willow was the 10-year-old daughter. So I definitely had a little bit of issues differentiating between the 2 middle children, but other than that, I thought the rest were all very well done, very unique, very interesting ways to look at this very, very disturbing situation. This is the story of a woman who has suffered many, 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 many miscarriages. And even though she has 5 children, she keeps wanting more. And the last miscarriage that she had has really, really sent her off the deep end. And it's an interesting commentary because it's kind of this weird commentary on like, be careful what you wish for and like be grateful for what you do have, alongside a narrative talking about how hard it is for a woman to recover after a miscarriage. And I thought Ania Ahlborn did a really, really good job of kind of laying the groundwork down for kind of creating these messages, but in a way not condemning somebody for feeling the way that they do. It's a really interesting way of looking at like postpartum depression as well, and a mother's bond. Ania Ahlborn has written many, 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 many stories about a mother's bond with maybe not the greatest of children. I'm going to leave it at that because I really don't want to ruin some of Ania Ahlborn's other stories. But if you haven't read The Devil Crept In, and you like this book, definitely check out The Devil Crept In. There's a lot of similar themes. I definitely think I prefer The Devil Crept In, just because to me it feels like a much more plot-driven narrative with a lot of different characters and storylines going on at once that all converge to kind of give a really interesting climax. I'll just leave it at that. This one is really very much just set in family drama within the home. And they're a unique family. They're a unique family. They're all, for the most part, people who have been used to being really ingrained in society, and after the pandemic kind of became, well, I don't want to say reclusive because they do still interact with their neighbors and like the town, but they keep to themselves. All of the children are willingly homeschooled instead of going to actual schools. They've moved further and further away from civilization and gotten deeper, deeper, deeper into farmland, and they're very much kept close to themselves. And so they become each other's orbits. And when their mom kind of goes out of sorts, it affects all of them. And it's really fun to get Isla's husband's perspective, as well as all of her children and all of the different age groups that you have and what they think about everything. And to me, the ones that I found the most interesting were August, who goes by Gus, and Eden, who are the two oldest children. You have Gus and then you have Eden. And they had the closest perspectives to adult perspectives, but still having this kind of like childhood naivety that I thought was really, really interesting compared to both Luke and Isla, who are kind of blinded by their situations. We have this postpartum depression that is consuming our matriarchal figure, and this need and desire to always be a mother, and this kind of like tunnel vision of to get to that goal, of to have another child, which I thought was really, really interesting, compared to a husband whose greatest concern, almost to a fault, is the happiness of his mentally unstable and fragile wife. And what will he put on the back burner in order to make sure that she is happy, and what will he give up? And a lot of this book asks the question of like, can you love somebody too much? Or can you be so blinded by love for one person that you overshadow and forget about and neglect another? And that's kind of the thesis for the entirety of this story, especially with our parental units. You then have your teenage children who kind of, again, have this clarity of what is happening, blocked by the kind of naivety of their youth, and just like the restrictions of being teenagers. Then you have our younger characters, Olive, Willow, and Sophie, who do feel very much childlike in nature, and just this kind of idea of like innocence and the wanting to please their family. All around this strange nonverbal child who has come into their home and is allowing and seems to maybe be the cause of some pretty gnarly things that are happening. I loved that dynamic. I loved all of the commentary that Ania Ahlborn was giving. I loved all of the different reactions and perspectives and feelings that you got from everybody. I loved their interactions with the outside world. I just loved how everything was built together. And I loved the different layers of familial relationships. You get glimpses into Luke and his relationship with his son, as well as his relationship with his father. And the same can be said with Isla, with the relationship with her children, and then her relationship with her mother, and her kind of shadowed past. And I just think that there was such a depth of character development into this novel. This is a very character-driven book. So I do have to emphasize this. This was a 5-star read for me. I breezed through this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I will say the ending the ending is bleak, as all Ania Ahlborn novels are. But the ending also starts to kind of touch upon topics of horror that I don't generally love. And yet it is done so in a way that is hinted at throughout the entire novel where I'm okay with it. And I felt like I had enough answers, no matter how like vague they were, to allow me to be okay with what was happening. And the kind of overarching bleakness of like the final scene and the implication of what is going to happen in this like cyclical nature of things, I thought was so gut-wrenching and well done that I'm okay with what the reveal of what everything was, because I do think it continued to allow the story to have the kind of commentary that it needed while still being an answer for what was happening. We don't necessarily know why, but I think that's kind of the point. And it's just kind of the insanity of it all and the extremes that come from it, especially, again, being things that are happening in this kind of strange rural setting of Colorado. I really, really enjoyed that. My favorite character was definitely Gus. I'm not going to get too deep into anybody's storyline, but Gus's storyline, that had an ending. That had an ending. I wish that there was more on that. I think that's my one biggest complaint, is him being my favorite character and my favorite perspective to read about. I really wish that his ending had a little bit more of a close-ended loop. I feel like it's not as necessary for some of the other children in the family. I think Eden had a phenomenal final storyline. I think it really helped showcase the meaning that Ania Ahlborn was putting into this book. And the same can be said with Isla. Maybe Luke, I don't know. I'm still uncertain on if Luke was a good guy or not. He was a very, very weak-willed person, so his ending kind of made sense to me. But Gus's ending is like the one thing that I'm like, if I'm really going to pick things apart, I needed more from that, because not only was he my favorite character, but I think he was written to be the character that the author wanted the reader to relate to the most. He does seem to have the clearest head on his shoulders around what's going on, even though he doesn't understand what's going on. And his just like love for his family and his love for his pets is so strong. And I love too when you have kind of like your cliche like punk rock outcast character being like kind of the like heroic lead. And I really enjoyed reading Gus's perspective, even though he was such a cliche like 17-year-old boy who listens to like rock music and metal. Like, I loved him. He was great. Lots of trigger warnings in this one. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of trigger warnings. Things happen to dogs. They don't die, don't worry, but things do happen to dogs. They are good boy and girl dogs, but just be aware of that. And of course, this is a massive story about loss of children and miscarriages, so definitely also be very much aware of that. And things that, like, we don't really know what happened to our new adoptive child before he comes to the family. We really have no clarity on where he came from. We don't really know too much about where Rowan is from, where he came from, what his backstory is. A lot of it is just what like child services puts together. So some of the theories are very, very bleak. Again, they're not really confirmed. And as you read the story, I think you'll get a better idea. They probably aren't factual. That's not a spoiler. That's just kind of the premise of what's going on. But just definitely be aware of that if you were sensitive to it. None of it really bothered me. Ania Ahlborn has always been pretty solid with the treatment of animals. And even if bad things happen to them, it is usually done with a purpose and not in a graphic or gratuitous way. The way she treats people in her stories, however, that's a completely different story. So be aware of that as well. I love this. It reminded me quite a lot of Dark Across the Bay, which I really, really enjoy. Definitely on the lines of as bleak. I would say that the ending of this one I definitely think is far more tragic and will really, really linger with you, and I kind of love that about Ania Ahlborn's books. So I was thrilled with this. This is not up there with Brother and The Devil Crept In. Those are definitely my two favorite things that I've ever read from her. I adore those stories. I'm always going to kind of have those as my pedestals, but I can't give this less than a 5 stars because I thought it was very well done and I really, really enjoyed what I read. And it's bleak. Like, going into this, it's fun to see Ania Ahlborn kind of tapping into different elements of horror and different styles of horror as she continues to write about basically the same type of horror. Like, it's always going to be horror within the family unit. That's her thing, that's her style, that's what she likes to talk about. And yet I haven't been bored with it yet. I haven't felt anything be redundant because she's exploring so many different styles of horror. And this will be my like one like minor spoiler. So like if you've gotten this far, I think you got the gist of everything. I think you figured out what I'm talking about. But the crux of this book is cosmic horror. And it is cosmic horror that shows up at the end in kind of grand fashion and really explains a lot of why things are happening with it's cosmic horror and these like beings that we don't really understand and you're powerless against them, you tiny little humans. But it's hinted at so well throughout like the second half of the novel that when it started like unraveling, I was like, I get it. I don't feel cheated. I don't feel like it's a cop-out. Cool. Let's carry on and see where this goes. And I didn't really need the answers for it. I think you just kind of accept when a cosmic being has entered the realm that like you're doomed. You're powerless against them. I think that is the horror of cosmic entities. And so I think it was really cool seeing Ania Ahlborn take that approach. And I know she's done similar things, but like nothing quite as on the nose as this. And I really enjoyed that. I don't fully know if I get the title. There's definitely like a moment where like the characters are talking about feeling unseen by their mom. And I think it goes back to like the thesis statement of like this woman being so blinded by what she doesn't have and this need for something she doesn't have that she completely forgets about everything that she does have. So I think that's kind of where the title is coming from. But I thought it was great. I thought the setting was beautiful. I loved how rich the characters were and how real they were and how connected I felt to them. Again, Olive and Willow kind of felt very similar. They probably could have maybe been one character, but I still very much appreciated what this story was. And I did like Olive, who stood out a little bit more than Willow, just trying so hard to like be the people pleaser and failing even though she feels like she's doing everything right. And she is doing everything that's asked of her and it's just not working. I thought that was a really good character line to have. So maybe Willow could have been like morphed into Olive. I feel like that might have been stronger with the characters. But that's really one of my only teeny tiny complaints. I have very, very little negative things to say about this. And again, like, I breezed through this. I was so happy. It was like Ania back in her like form. It's what I wanted from her. It was, again, just this rich, cool, bleak concept with just such a dark ending. The final scene with Eden, it was just like gut-wrenching when you realize what's happening. Oh my god. And I wasn't prepared for that, and definitely reading it, I was like, oh my god, this is like, it's so dark. And honestly, if you enjoy Brother and you enjoyed The Devil Crept In, you're gonna read this and be like, yeah, that's an Ania Ahlborn ending, you know? To me, this was darker than the ending of Dark Across the Bay, which I thought was very dark. Not as dark as Brother, but like up there with The Devil Crept In. Like, this is a depressing book. So know that going in. But I really loved this. And so yeah, 5 stars. Very minor complaints. Loved it. Didn't love it as much as some of my favorite Anias, but still really, really, really strong offering. So super happy with that because I've had some disappointing reads recently, and I've been on kind of a 5-star kick, which like never happens to me. So I know it's going to end soon. But I was really, really impressed with that. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I'm trying to post 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!